welcome to the Shopify Data Migration Hub. We are very excited to help you with your migration to Shopify. And this introductory video will walk you through the initial steps of taking a look at your data files and doing a quick assessment to decide what your best choice would be to proceed with your migration. So just to go over the content that will be covered in this video, the first section will be on how data migration works, and this will be a high-level explanation on how CSV files are connected to the Shopify admin, or how we can use CSV files to populate data. Next, we'll be moving on to the exported data assessment and your options depending on how your data looks like. So this will be broken out into 3 tiers: simple, standard, and advanced. The simple options will show you options where you will spend very little time in CSV editing, and you'll spend more time in our admin adjusting your data or importing your data. Standard is going to have a moderate amount spent in your CSV editor or your spreadsheet editor. This will have some included automated tools to help you format the data so that you are spending as little time as possible, but it still is spreadsheet centric, and you will be required to use your spreadsheet editor to make some adjustments. And advanced is your fully customized option where you will be spending almost all of your time in CSV editing. There's very little automation that we will be offering in the advanced option, but it will give you full flexibility of how your data will look like. From there, I'll move on to the best practices, which is the final section. There are some suggestions that we have for all groups or all companies, no matter how your data looks like, and I'll go over those best practices near the end of the video. Let's jump into the first section here. I'll be doing a high-level explanation of how data migration works with the Shopify system. So in this section, we will be taking a look at how product creation is done through Shopify admin, and then from there, describing how CSVs get involved with product creation with Shopify. So to start, I'm showing you an example through the admin here. If we go into the products section, we can manually use the interface to enter in our products one by one. So for example, you would fill out information such as the product title, the price, the SKU, and you would go on and on through the sheet or the page here, and you would fill out any information that you have on that product, and you can hit save at any time. And that product is now created in your Shopify account. Now, this is a manual option where you can use the interface and upload items one by one, but what if you have a spreadsheet file or a CSV that you can export from your old system and you would like to import that into Shopify? How would that work? Well, it is possible through the import function over here. Now, we would be able to grab a sample CSV template and open it up to take a look at the Shopify formatting that you would paste your data into so that you can import it into Shopify. So with this file, you have to keep our headers in row 1 exactly the same, and you would paste the appropriate data from your old system's sheet into the appropriate column. I'm not going to go through all of the column descriptions right now. This is really just mentioned as a reference for you at this point in the video, because after we do the data assessment in the next sections, you will just need to understand how those tools work with this CSV file. So right now I'll just reference it and show it very quickly. Through the import window over here, you can learn more about what each of those fields mean. Again, I won't go through all of those right now, but if you are more of an advanced user or your data assessment puts you in the advanced category, you may use that resource to learn what each of those headers mean. Or another great way to take a look at the Shopify CSV format and learn how it works is to take that item that you just manually added, and you can export that data as well into a CSV format. And once you export that product that you had manually made, you'll get a CSV file and you can open it up through your sheet editor to take a look at where all of your data that you had entered was mapped to, which column it was essentially. And that can help you learn the formatting of the Shopify product CSV very, very quickly. So again, that is the shirt that I just created, and we're seeing how it was formatted and what data fell under which particular column. So again, we are just taking a look at this CSV file in this section of the video just so that you can refer back to how our normal formatting looks like. The tools offered through the different data assessment sections of this video will help you automate some of these fields if possible. For you advanced users, once again, likely you will be taking a blank CSV formatted file and pasting your data under the appropriate columns. All right, so let's jump into the next section here. In this part of the video, I'll be teaching you how to do a data assessment, and with this particular section, how to determine whether or not your data is considered simple or something else. So first, let's jump into an example data sheet. This is an example sheet of data that we would consider simple. It doesn't have to look exactly the same. You can have additional columns of data that I don't particularly have in this data sheet. But what is important to determine whether or not it is simple or not is taking a look at how the product titles or the parent products are laid out here. So in this example, all of your products have the product name, and if it has an option, it's included in that product name. So that is actually what makes this product CSV simple. It is because we don't have additional columns describing the different options for this graphic tee or the sweater or any products that we have laid out in here. It is just included directly in the product title. To help describe the difference between a simple sheet of data and something else, such as standard or advanced, I'm going to show you the standard sheet of data as well to show you the difference of how the product titles are laid out. So I've highlighted here in my standard sheet of data how the product titles and their options are laid out. And as you can see, the major difference here is that the options such as size, color, and material appear in columns that are separated from the title. So that is a major indicator that your data is no longer what we consider simple. If it does have a layout like this, which is called a product matrix in many cases, if you have a product matrix, it is no longer simple. You will have to have a file without one to be considered simple. So with this data sheet, you will be able to spend very little time editing your data in CSV format. What you can do is directly download your CSV format or your CSV file, upload it into the Shopify admin through the products page here, and you will use what we call the column headings editor. So I'm just giving you a quick preview of this. Basically what will happen is we'll take your CSV file and we'll do our best to match up all of your data to a heading that exists in our CSV format. And you can pick and choose through these drop-down menus what piece of data that is if we don't automatically match it, or if you don't believe that we did the correct match for that piece of data. So you don't have to paste your data into our CSV format at all. You can keep it in your format and just do the data mapping through this interface here and upload all of your items that way. So I did want to explain some of the caveats with using this type of format, just in case you would like to switch your data into a different type of format if it doesn't suit your needs. So again, because we have our data as all different parent items or without a product matrix, all of these items will be displayed as a separate item listing through a product grid on your shopping website. or your online store. So this is how it would look like for that graphic tee. Your customer would land on a product grid and they would have to choose the correct option, whether it be size, color, etc., before they see that page with its description and add it to the cart. To show you the difference as to how it would look like if we were to change your data into the standard format, if you do have a product matrix laid out, we would be able to display that item as a single landing page with a size or option dropdown, whatever the options may be. And the customer would be able to visit one single landing page for that product and choose the option that they would like to add to their cart. Now, for some businesses, the simple layout may still make sense for you. So let's just take a look at a different product type, such as selling cups. So if we were to have this cup in the simple layout where it's not split out in a product matrix, it still makes a lot of sense for this business because maybe you do want your product grids or your category pages or collection pages to show the different options instead of showing it as a drop down. So the customer would land on this page and visually see what they want to add to the cart and quickly determine the different options that way instead of having to land on a single page and use a drop down menu. Perhaps that does work better for you. Another call out that I will point out is that if you are only selling on our point of sale, then the product matrix won't really matter because the customer experience is still the same. Most likely you're scanning a barcode or finding the product somehow as a staff member, and this type of layout, having the product matrix, really doesn't matter in that case if you're just selling on the point of sale. What I'll end off with in this section is if you would like to have a product matrix, then you'll have to split this data out to be formatted in the standard format. In the next section of the video, I will give you some options as to potential automation that you could have if your data looks like this and you want to split it out into a product matrix. Moving on to the next section, we'll be doing another data assessment, but this time we'll be taking a look at standard type data. So going back to my example data here, this is a sheet that we would consider a standard level type of data. So taking a look at the product names and the different options over here, this is what we call a product matrix. So if you do have a product matrix where there are different columns for the different variant options or the different options that the customer could be choosing for the product, then that would be considered standard. So as you can see here, I have size, color, material. Some of the items only have a few of them, some of them have all of them. That's completely fine. Now, one thing to note is that the standard options that we have, or the tools that we have for standard type data, we can only handle up to 3 columns that hold your options. So in this case, I have size, color, material. Let's just say I had size, color, material, and pattern as another column. That is something that you'll have to use the advanced option for, because our standard option again can only handle up to 3 of these columns. So that is something important to note. Now, I did mention in the last section where we took a look at the simple data that you could format your data to look like the standard type data with a little bit of automation depending on how your product titles are laid out. So for example, you see that these titles are laid out with a dash. What Sheets can do is take a look at delimiters. So basically they'll take a look at your data and they can separate it out automatically by using a special character to know that that is where it should start separating it out. So with this particular sheet, what I'll do is I'll add 2 extra columns because I have sizes and colors. So I'll add one to the right, another one to the right. And if I just highlight that data and go to the data column, and then we will go up to split text to columns. And we can use some options here. So It has some suggested delimiters like comma, semicolon, period, space, etc. But I can enter my own, such as dash, hit enter. And as you can see here, it has split out my data so that it looks similar to the standard type data instead. So I would go ahead and do that would be the size, and then this would be the color column. Now, if I did have my data in such a way where sometimes I had the color first and then the size second kind of thing, then you may have to do some cleanup before you can actually use that as standard data. But that is an option that I want to mention for those of you that do have simple type data exported, but you do have some kind of special character in there that you could use as a delimiter to split out the data and turn it into your standard type data so that you can have more options on the Shopify online store. So with this type of data, what we can do is use what we call the product CSV assistant. This is the landing page here. Now the page will lead you to this landing page, and it has a training video on using the tool itself, so I'll go over this very quickly. But essentially this option will have you fill out a form to tell us what type of data that you're importing or how it looks like. So just further doing a data assessment so that we can give you a very specific template so that you can fill out that template with only the fields that you need, and the template will look like this. Once you get your template, basically what you'll do is paste your data into the columns that we have presented to you. And again, these columns will be presented if you indicate that you need them. And what will happen from there is our system that we've created here will automatically create the product CSV with the needed format. And it will do that automatically for you after you pasted your information through the customized template that we've created for you. So this is a file that may look familiar because I had brought it up in the first part of the video, but this is our product CSV format, but we've automatically created it for you using this option after you've pasted your standard type data into this tab over here. So you would just import this converted sheet into the Shopify admin after you've done that work. So moving on to the last data assessment section here, we'll be talking about the advanced options. Now this one is a little bit harder to describe because essentially if you've watched the videos and you've decided that the simple and the standard sections don't look like the data that you've exported, or if you've even tried the simple and standard options presented to you on the page and you've decided that it doesn't work well for you, then at that point, essentially, you're taking a look at the advanced option as being your final choice that you could use to fully customize the product CSV import and have full control over what you're importing into Shopify. So there's no automation included in this type of option. You are going to have full control, but you're lacking that automation. Now I do have some example data sheets to show you some common examples or common reasons as to why we should be going with the advanced option, but really this is just the tip of the iceberg. So there's many different reasons why you could go with the advanced option. But the first example that we're looking at here, if we again take a look at the product matrix, as you can see here, there's many different types of products, and so the options or variants that are included with those products, they vary and have a wide range of things that the customer could choose in terms of those products and their options. So for example, we have size here, we have color as well, there's material, there's height, door options, frame options, lens options. So on this sheet alone, there's 7 options that could be chosen. So if we were to compare this to the standard type data where the options were laid out in different columns, it doesn't look like this. Instead, this system has let them have a different type of variable for each product, And so it's not laid out in separate columns like we saw in the standard file. So this is what we would consider advanced because it's laid out in this particular way. So with the Shopify advanced options, basically what you'll be doing is getting a blank CSV file, our blank product CSV file, and pasting your data or arranging the file in there. Again, without any kind of automation, you'll be manually pasting it in the format that we need to see it in that CSV file. So I'll show you how to grab the files needed so that you can proceed with that. This is help.shopify.com, our help center. If we do a search for product CSV, I would suggest using this help page called Using CSV Files. What you can do from here is get a sample CSV file, and also you can take a look at the product CSV file format to understand what the columns are expecting or what this description of each column would be so that you know what data to place under those particular cells. Now what we will have available for you is a CSV file where it is the example data. So this is the example data in the first few rows over here, but we've also pasted in the descriptions of the column examples or descriptions that you were seeing on this page over here on your help doc. So if you prefer to work from a single file without switching back and forth to understand what the columns mean, then you can use the file that we've made available for you to download here. With this particular file, again, you would go through all the columns and have full control over the data that you're pasting in here, but you would need to follow a strict format to make sure that you have all of the needed data filled out. And that would be how you could work with this particular example of data where you have very vastly different types of products or data that you need to paste into Shopify. Another example of when we would use the advanced type of option here, so the blank CSV file, if we take a look at this particular sheet of data, we have a merchant that sells wine. Now with the wine sales, they have a lot of different data here in these columns where they're describing where the wine is coming from, or the regions, or if it's a vintage and the variety and things like that. So because Shopify doesn't have these particular types of columns, they wouldn't be able to just paste these into a column that would be kind of a one-to-one comparison. So what that merchant would have to do is go through and split up the data and place some of those columns into other columns that may be more appropriate in Shopify for those things. And so they would have to splice up that data and really kind of strategize how to use that data in the blank Shopify CSV format here. All right, so let's go over some best practices and some tips for any users that are going through the data migration process. So the first point being taking the chance to clean your data. So after you've exported your data from your old system, delete any old data that you will not be using anymore. For example, products that are outdated and you will no longer be selling. It's a good chance to just clean out any of that data that you don't need to have in Shopify moving forward. Also, for those of you who have been using Shopify for one or more channels already, you should be deduplicating any product data that already exists in Shopify and taking it out of the exported sheet that you have with your system right now. So this will just avoid any errors or mistakes where a product is duplicated. It is suggested that you should just remove those lines of data from your sheet before you import into Shopify. Another important point to keep in mind is that you should be checking your barcodes. What I would suggest is doing some spot checking, maybe scanning one or two items labels and comparing it to the code that appears on the exported file that you had taken from your old system. So for example, let's just say with this sheet I have this plain t-shirt in small and red. I would take a look at the UPC code and from there compare it to what the UPC actually scans in as when you use a scanner to read that barcode. So to perform this test, what I would suggest is downloading the Shopify point of sale app on your iPad or even your phone. And what you can use from there after you've logged in is this barcode scanner, which appears in this icon right over here by the search bar. If you click on that, that will activate the back-facing camera, allow you to place the barcode in the center of the camera here. And from there, it will tell you what code was scanned. So I would compare that code to the code that I see in the CSV file. Let's pretend that was the same red t-shirt that I had from my sheet. But from there, you would go back to your sheet. If it matches exactly, then you're good to go, and you're probably going to be good to go with all of your codes if it came from the same system. Now, if it's a situation where it's different than what appears on the sheet, so for example, if there's leading zeros or there's extra digits at the end, if you do some spot testing and you notice that there are some differences, then that probably means that all of the barcodes that were created from your previous system have that leading zero or extra digit at the end. And so you'll just have to make sure you have the right codes on your sheet before you do any kind of importing into Shopify. We need an exact match in Shopify to work. So even if it's slightly off with that extra digit or leading zero, it will not work when you scan that item in Shopify. Another suggestion that I would have regarding barcodes is to make sure that they are not in scientific format. Now, I've opened up a file in Excel here. I've noticed that the Excel program does do this quite a bit. So I'll take a look at the barcode field, for example, and what can happen is it will put these numbers into scientific format because they are very long. And if you take a look at the actual number here, it's different for each cell that we're highlighting, but it looks the same in the barcode field here. So that's not going to work very well with Shopify. If you were to copy and paste and import the value that we see here with the E plus 12 at the end, that is not actually going to allow your products to scan using the system. So what you want to do if you do see this occurring is you want to highlight that whole column that you see the scientific format occurring in. If you right click on that and you do a format cells function, and what you want to do is do a custom number and just click this 0 option, which is basically just a number without decimal places, hit OK, and you want to start working with your data after it's expanded into the true numbers as we're seeing over here. Now, I haven't seen Google Sheets do the scientific notation automatically, so that is an option for you if you aren't married to using Excel. But if you are using Excel, I have seen the scientific notation being automated, so just keep an eye out for that. The last point that I want to mention is the advantages of importing your products with unique SKU codes. This is especially important for you users who fall into that advanced category. There's a lot of advantages for having a unique SKU for all of your products, because if you're importing multiple files or your data lives across multiple sheets of data, there's many different options where Shopify or attached apps can just identify your products using the SKU code. So instead of having a multi-column sheet to update just one particular thing in Shopify, a lot of the times what you can do is just have the SKU as an identifier and update a single piece of data by matching up the products using that SKU. So those are the things that I wanted to mention as best practices, and from there we'll move on to which path that makes sense for you.